The fog clung to the Brooklyn Navy Yard like a shroud, muffling the distant clang of hammers on steel hulls. It was a chill evening in October 1935, the kind that whispered secrets through the skeletal frames of half-built warships. Admiral John Harrington, a man of iron will and hidden burdens, sat alone in his dimly lit office overlooking the East River. A single lamp cast long shadows across blueprints strewn like fallen leaves. He sipped his evening brandy, then clutched his throat, eyes widening in terror. The glass shattered on the floor as he slumped forward, lifeless. Who had poisoned the Admiral? And what fatal secret had driven them to murder? The yard's sirens wailed into the night, but the truth lay buried deeper than the river's murky depths. Chapter 1. The Summons to the Yard. The fog draped over the Brooklyn Navy Yard like a heavy velvet curtain, muting the rhythmic clang of hammers on steel and the low hum of machinery that pulsed through the night. It was October 1935, a time when the world teetered on the edge of unseen storms, and the air in New York carried both the chill of autumn and the weight of unspoken secrets. The East River lapped against the docks, its dark waters reflecting the dim glow of lanterns swaying in the mist. Warships, half-built and skeletal, loomed like specters in the haze, their iron frames whispering of naval might and hidden intrigues. In the heart of this industrial fortress, a tragedy had unfolded, one that would summon the meticulous mind of Hercule Poirot to unravel its tangled threads. Poirot sat in the back of a rattling taxi, his gloved hands folded neatly over the silver handle of his cane, his mustache impeccably trimmed despite the transatlantic journey. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, gazed out at the looming silhouette of the Brooklyn Bridge, its cables slicing through the fog like the strings of some great harp. The city's skyline glittered faintly in the distance, a testament to human ambition, yet Poirot's gray eyes remained fixed ahead, lost in thought. "Mon ami Hastings," Poirot said, his Belgian accent crisp yet melodious. "This New York, it is a marvel, no? Skyscrapers that touch the heavens.
Police, they are capable, but they lack the method of Poirot. Inspector Malone has requested our consultation, and so we answer the call." The taxi jolted to a stop at the Navy Yard's iron gates, where stern-faced Marines stood guard, their rifles glinting under the sodium lamps. The air smelled of salt, oil, and something acrid, perhaps the residue of industry, or perhaps the aftermath of death. A Marine checked their credentials with a curt nod, then waved them through. The yard was a labyrinth of cranes, scaffolds, and half-constructed hulls, a hive of activity even at this late hour. Workers in overalls moved like shadows, their shouts swallowed by the fog. Inspector Malone met them at the administrative building, a squat brick structure overlooking the docks. A burly man with a ruddy face and an Irish lilt, Malone exuded the weary competence of a seasoned detective. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," he said, shaking their hands with a grip like iron. "Glad you made it. This one's a mess. Admiral Harrington was found last night, dead in his office. Cyanide in his brandy, coroner says. Door locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry." Poirot's eyebrows arched slightly as he followed Malone up a narrow staircase to the Admiral's office. "Locked, you say? Most intriguing. And the key?" "Still in the lock, inside," Malone replied. "Either the killer had a duplicate, or they pulled some trick." The office was a study in ordered chaos. Blueprints of submarines and destroyers lay scattered across a heavy oak desk, their edges curling like autumn leaves. A single lamp cast long shadows, illuminating a chalk outline where the Admiral's body had lain. The brandy bottle stood on a side table, its amber liquid glinting, while shards of a shattered glass littered the floor. Poirot knelt, his eyes scanning the scene with surgical precision. He noted the faint scent of perfume lingering in the air. Floral. Expensive. Out of place in this utilitarian space. The safe in the corner stood ajar, its contents rifled, papers spilling onto the rug.
Mon Dieu. Lang, his business partner in ship designs. They were feuding over patents, loud enough for the whole yard to hear. Dr. Miriam Voss, a chemist here, was rumored to be close to the Admiral, if you catch my drift. And Lieutenant Samuel Reed, a young officer he demoted last month for botching a security detail. Hastings whistled softly. Motives as thick as this fog. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Motives, mon ami, are like the smoke of a fire. We must find the flame itself, the truth beneath the appearances. He paced the room, his polished shoes silent on the rug, pausing to inspect a photograph on the wall. The Admiral in dress whites, a gold locket dangling from his neck. This locket, Poirot said, tapping the frame, it was found on the body? Malone shook his head. No sign of it. Could have been taken by the killer, or hidden by the victim, Poirot mused. He turned to the window where the East River shimmered faintly through the mist. The Admiral. He worked late, often? Every night, Malone said. Locked himself in. Didn't trust anyone with those classified plans. Submarines, mostly. New designs for the Navy. Critical with Europe getting twitchy. Poirot nodded, his mind already weaving threads of possibility. And the brandy bottle. Tested? Clean. Except for the cyanide residue in the glass fragments. Looks like the poison was added directly to his drink. Curieux, Poirot said softly. A locked room, a missing locket, a scent of perfume, a rifled safe, and yet the truth is never so simple as it appears. They left the office, descending into the yard where the fog seemed to thicken, wrapping the cranes and docks in an eerie silence. Hastings shivered, pulling his coat tighter. This place gives me the creeps, Poirot, like the whole yard's hiding something. Précisément, Poirot replied, his eyes scanning the shadows. The Brooklyn Navy Yard. It is a fortress of secrets, military, personal, perhaps both. We must tread carefully, for the killer may still be among us. As they passed a row of warehouses, Poirot's keen ears caught a faint sound, a scuff of boots in the spaces between them. Chapter 2. The Widow's Veil. The morning after their arrival at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings stepped out of their hotel into a city stirring beneath a gray October sky. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of salt from the East River, and the distant rumble of streetcars mingled with the cries of newsboys hawking papers about the latest tensions in Europe. Brooklyn Heights, with its elegant brownstones and tree-lined streets, stood in stark contrast to the industrial sprawl of the Navy Yard. Yet it too held secrets behind its polished facades. Poirot, immaculate in his tailored overcoat and polished shoes, adjusted his hat against the breeze, his mustache twitching as if sensing the undercurrents of deception that awaited them. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Hastings as they walked toward the Harrington residence, "today we meet the widow, Madame Eleanor Harrington. A woman in mourning, perhaps, but grief can mask many things, guilt, fear, or even calculation." Hastings, ever the optimist, glanced at the stately homes they passed. "She's a society lady, Poirot. Surely she wouldn't stoop to murder. Besides, Malone said she was at a gala when the Admiral died." Poirot's eyes gleamed with that familiar spark of skepticism. "Alibis, Hastings, are like the fog we saw last night. Thick, convincing, but easily parted by the light of reason. We shall see what lies beneath her veil of sorrow." The Harrington residence was a grand brownstone, its ivy-clad facade exuding old money and quiet dignity. A maid in a starched apron ushered them into a parlor where velvet drapes softened the morning light. The room was a study in refined taste. Mahogany furniture gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and a portrait of Admiral John Harrington in full naval regalia hung above the fireplace, his stern gaze seeming to follow their every move. A faint scent of lavender hung in the air, mingling with the polish of the wood, creating an atmosphere both comforting and oppressive. Eleanor Harrington entered, a vision in black silk, her auburn hair swept into an elegant chignon. Instance, was it a ritual? She nodded, her eyes flickering to the portrait above. Every night, John would retire to his office at the yard, lock the door, and pour himself a glass of brandy. He said it helped him focus on his work. Those submarine designs were his obsession, classified, of course, with all this talk of war in Europe. Poirot leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "And you, madame, were you privy to these designs, or to any tensions in his work?" Eleanor's lips tightened briefly. John kept his work private, even from me. He was a man of duty, but at home, he could be distant, controlling. Our marriage was not always a happy one, Mr. Poirot. Hastings raised an eyebrow, jotting notes in his pocketbook. Distant, you say? Had he seemed worried lately? Any threats? She hesitated, her fingers pausing on the handkerchief. He was preoccupied. A few nights ago I heard him muttering in his sleep, something about a fatal secret from the Great War. I thought it was just dreams, but now... Perhaps someone was blackmailing him. Poirot's gray eyes narrowed, catching the slight tremor in her voice. Blackmail, madame? A serious accusation? And where were you on the night of his death? I was at a charity gala at the Waldorf Astoria, she replied, her tone firm, but her gaze faltering. Dozens of people saw me. Mrs. Astor, the mayor's wife, even that dreadful gossip columnist Clara Bell. I left at midnight and came straight home. Most convenient, Poirot murmured, almost to himself. He rose, pacing the room with deliberate steps, his cane tapping softly on the parquet floor. His eyes fell on a silver-framed photograph on a side table. The Admiral and Eleanor at a naval ball, his arm around her waist, a gold locket glinting at his throat. This locket, madame, it was special to him? Eleanor's hand froze mid-twist. Yes, a family heirloom. He wore it always, said it reminded him of his duty. I noticed it was missing when they showed me his body. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. And this fatal secret, did he ever speak of enemies? Perhaps Victor Lang, his partner.
Might we have tea? The little grey cells, they require refreshment. As the maid departed, Poirot wandered to the fireplace, his fingers brushing the mantel where a small vase held fresh roses, red, vibrant, and oddly out of place in a house of mourning. These flowers, madame, who sent them? A condolence gift, Eleanor said quickly, from the Navy Yard staff. But Poirot's keen nose detected the same floral perfume he had smelled in the Admiral's office, faint but unmistakable. He said nothing, merely smiling politely as the tea arrived. The conversation turned to lighter matters, but Poirot's mind was elsewhere, weaving a tapestry of clues. The missing locket, the perfume, the whispered secret, the gala alibi. As they prepared to leave, Poirot paused at the threshold, turning back to Eleanor. One last question, madame. Did your husband ever speak of a Lieutenant Samuel Reed? Her face remained composed, but her hands tightened on the handkerchief. The young officer John demoted. Yes, he was furious, called Reed incompetent, a liability. Why do you ask? Poirot's smile was inscrutable. A detail, nothing more. Merci, madame. We shall speak again. Outside, the sky had darkened, and a light rain began to patter on the cobblestone street, mirroring the unease in Poirot's mind. Hastings pulled his coat tighter, glancing back at the brownstone. She's hiding something, Poirot. That tremble in her voice, did you catch it? Oui, Hastings, Poirot replied, his cane tapping rhythmically as they walked. The widow wears her veil well, but it is not impenetrable. The perfume, the locket, her too perfect alibi, they are threads in a larger web. And this fatal secret, it is the key, I think, to unlocking the truth. They hailed a taxi, the rain streaking the windows as they headed back to the Navy Yard. Poirot's thoughts turned to the other suspects, Lang, Voss, Reed, each with motives as tangled as the fog that cloaked the docks. The locket, he suspected, was more than a trinket. It was a symbol of something deeper, perhaps a betrayal from the Admiral's past. The Navy Yard. A figure stood at the edge of the docks, barely visible through the rain. Poirot's sharp eyes caught the movement. A man, perhaps, slipping into the shadows of a warehouse. "Hastings," he whispered, "did you see?" "See what?" Hastings peered into the gloom, but the figure was gone. Poirot's face grew solemn. "Someone watches us, mon ami. The killer, perhaps, or another with secrets to guard. This yard, it is a maze of motives, and we have only begun to navigate it." The rain fell harder now, drumming on the taxi's roof, a somber rhythm that echoed the pulse of the mystery. Somewhere in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, a fatal secret lay buried, and Poirot vowed to unearth it, no matter how deep the shadows grew. Chapter 3. The Partner's Grudge. The Brooklyn Navy Yard pulsed with the heartbeat of industry as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings navigated its labyrinthine paths the following morning. The fog had lifted, revealing a crisp October day in 1935, the sun glinting off the skeletal frames of warships under construction. Cranes swung heavy steel plates through the air, and the shouts of dockworkers mingled with the screech of rivets being driven into hulls. The air carried the sharp bite of oil and metal, but to Poirot, it was the scent of human ambition and deception that held his attention. They were bound for the office of Victor Lang, the Admiral's business partner, whose feud over ship design patents had echoed through the yard like a storm warning. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his cane tapping rhythmically on the cobblestone path. "This Victor Lang, he is a man of passion, non? A man who believes his genius has been stolen. Such a wound to the pride. It can drive one to desperate acts." Hastings, adjusting his hat against the breeze, frowned. "You think he's our man, Poirot? Poison seems a bit subtle for a hothead like Lang. I'd expect a brawl, not cyanide." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Ah, Hastings, you see the surface, but the little gray cells, they probe deeper. Anger may wear a loud mask, but it can plan in silence. Let us see what Monsieur Lang reveals." They reached the quick. Poirot settled into a chair, his gloved hands folded neatly over his cane. "Monsieur Lang, we seek only the truth. You and Admiral Harrington were partners, no? Yet Inspector Malone speaks of disagreements." Lang snorted, resuming his pacing like a caged tiger. "Disagreements? That's putting it mildly. Harrington was a brilliant engineer, but a greedy bastard. Those torpedo designs, my designs, he was passing them off as his own. Wanted all the patents, all the glory. We argued yesterday afternoon right there in his office. He threatened to cut me out entirely." Hastings leaned forward, notebook in hand. "Cut you out? That's motive enough for murder, Mr. Lang." Lang's eyes flashed. "Sure, I hated his guts, but I didn't kill him. You think I'd risk my career over his double-crossing? I've got too much riding on these contracts." Poirot's gray eyes studied Lang closely, noting the sweat beading on his brow despite the cool room. "And what, monsieur, did the Admiral say during this argument? Did he mention a fatal secret, perhaps?" Lang paused, his hand hovering over the cigar. "A secret? He said something cryptic, claimed he had proof of my indiscretions, gambling debts mostly. Said he'd ruin me if I pushed him on the patents. He reached into a drawer and produced a crumpled piece of paper. Found this in his desk after he died. Look. Poirot took the note, his gloved fingers handling it as if it were a rare artifact. Scrawled in jagged ink were the words, "Reveal the secret or die." The handwriting was uneven, almost theatrical in its flourish. "This is not your hand, you say?" "Of course not," Lang snapped. "Someone's trying to frame me. Probably that chemist, Voss. She was always sniffing around Harrington." Hastings scribbled furiously. "Where were you the night he died, Mr. Lang?" "Home, alone, working on blueprints," Lang said, gesturing to a stack of drawings. "Got a dozen witnesses who saw me leave the yard at 6. After that, no one." Photograph on the wall. Lang and Harrington shaking hands at a naval ceremony. The Admiral's locket visible at his throat. "This locket," Poirot said, tapping the frame. "You saw it often?" Lang frowned. "Sure, he never took it off. Some family trinket," he said. "Why's it matter?" "A detail, nothing more," Poirot replied, his tone deceptively light. He moved to the window, where the yard sprawled below, workers swarming like ants. The East River shimmered in the sunlight, but its depths held secrets as dark as the fog of the previous night. "Tell me, Monsieur Lang, did you ever meet Lieutenant Samuel Reed?" Lang's lip curled. "That kid? Harrington's whipping boy. Demoted for screwing up a security detail. He was bitter, always lurking around the docks. If anyone had a grudge, it's him." Hastings glanced at Poirot. "Another suspect with a motive." "Oui," Poirot said, his voice low. "But motives, they are like the rivets in these ships. Many, yet only one holds the true weight." He thanked Lang and gestured for Hastings to follow him outside. As they stepped into the yard, the air vibrated with the clang of hammers and the whistle of steam. Poirot paused near the Admiral's office, his eyes falling on the ground where the cigar butt had been found. "Hastings, observe. This butt, it matches Lang's brand. Yet it was not inside the office, but here, outside the door. A careless smoker or a careful killer?" Hastings squinted at the spot, now swept clean by the yard's janitors. "You think Lang dropped it to throw us off?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his gaze distant. "Or someone wishes us to think so. The note, the cigar, the rifled safe, they are pieces of a puzzle, but the picture is not yet clear." They walked toward the docks, where workers were unloading crates under the watchful eyes of Marines. Poirot's mind churned, weaving threads of evidence. The threatening note, possibly forged. The cigar butt, too conveniently placed. Lang's volatile temper and financial desperation. And streamed past, their faces weathered by labor and secrecy. Poirot's expression grew solemn. Lang's grudge is real. But is it the fire, or merely more smoke? We must speak with Dr. Voss next. Her knowledge of cyanide. It is most suggestive. As they moved toward the laboratory, a gust of wind carried the scent of the river, sharp and briny, a reminder of the depths they had yet to plumb. The mystery of the Admiral's death was a tangle of ambition, betrayal, and hidden truths, and Poirot knew that each step brought them closer to the heart of the fatal secret, or to the killer who guarded it. Chapter 4. The Chemist's Formula. The Brooklyn Navy Yard thrummed with the relentless pulse of industry as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings made their way to the chemical laboratory. a low brick building tucked amid the towering cranes and skeletal warships. The late morning sun of October 1935 burned through the last wisps of fog, casting harsh light on the oil-slicked cobblestones and the East River beyond, its surface glinting like polished steel. The air was thick with the acrid bite of chemicals, mingling with the ever-present tang of salt and rust. To Poirot, the laboratory promised not just answers, but the scent of truth or deception hidden in the formulas of science. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his polished shoes clicking as he navigated a narrow path between crates. "This Dr. Miriam Voss, she is a woman of intellect, no? A chemist in a man's world, working with cyanide, no less. Such a mind could craft a poison as easily as a lie." Hastings, clutching his notebook, glanced warily at the laboratory's smokestack, puffing faint plumes into the sky. "She's got the means, Poirot, no question. But motive? If she was the Admiral's lover, as the rumors suggest, why kill him? Love doesn't usually end in cyanide." Poirot's mustache twitched with a knowing smile. "Ah, Hastings, love is a flame that can warm or burn. Betrayal, jealousy, or a secret too heavy to bear. These can turn passion into
Eyes scanning her face for the smallest flicker of unease. "Mademoiselle Voss, your reputation as a chemist precedes you. We are here to discuss Admiral Harrington and the unfortunate matter of his death by cyanide." Her lips tightened briefly, but she met his gaze. "A tragedy. John was a colleague, a mentor. I'm sure you've heard the rumors, but I assure you our relationship was professional." Hastings raised an eyebrow, jotting notes. "Professional, Dr. Voss? Yet Mrs. Harrington suggested otherwise. And cyanide, your specialty, isn't it?" Voss's cheeks flushed, but her tone remained steady. "I work with many compounds, Captain, including cyanide derivatives for ship paint preservatives. It's not uncommon in industrial chemistry. As for John, we were close, collaborators on his submarine projects. He consulted me often on corrosion resistance. But an affair?" She shook her head. "Eleanor's jealousy saw what wasn't there. John ended our friendship weeks ago, said it was causing too much talk." Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping against the tiled floor, his eyes darting to a shelf of labeled vials, one marked potassium cyanide. "Most interesting, mademoiselle. And this cyanide, how is it stored? Secured?" She gestured to a locked cabinet. "Under key, always. Only I and the head technician have access. I checked after John's death. Nothing's missing." "Yet the Admiral died of cyanide," Poirot said softly, his voice like a velvet glove over steel. "Administered, perhaps, by one with knowledge of its properties. Tell me, what was the nature of your last meeting with him?" Voss hesitated, adjusting her glasses. 2 days before he died, we discussed a new formula, a coating for submarine hulls, potentially worth millions to the Navy or others. He was agitated, mentioned a fatal secret that could ruin him. I thought he meant a rival stealing our work." Hastings leaned forward. "Others? You mean foreign powers?" Her eyes flickered. "Possibly. With Europe arming, naval secrets are gold. John was paranoid about espionage, kept everything locked in his safe." Poirot stopped beside a workbench.
"I wear perfume, yes. Gardenia. It's common enough. Surely you don't think—" "I think only what the facts permit," Poirot interrupted gently, his tone disarming yet relentless. "The Admiral's fatal secret. Did he confide more? A name, perhaps? Or a fear?" She shook her head, but her fingers trembled slightly. "He mentioned the Great War once. Something about a mistake he made, a burden he carried. I didn't press him. He was distant that last week," Hastings scribbled, glancing at Poirot. A war secret. That could be motive for blackmail or murder. Précisément, Poirot said, his eyes never leaving Voss. He wandered to a window overlooking the yard, where workers hauled crates under the watchful eyes of Marines. A memory stirred, the cigar butt near the Admiral's office. Lang's brand. Was Voss's perfume another planted clue, or a careless trace of her presence? He turned back to her. One final question, mademoiselle. Did you know of a locket the Admiral wore? Her brow furrowed. Yes, a gold locket. He said it was a family heirloom. Never took it off. Why? It is missing, Poirot said simply, watching her reaction. Her surprise seemed genuine, but he trusted appearances as little as he trusted a calm sea. Merci, mademoiselle. We shall speak again. As they left the laboratory, the chemical fumes gave way to the briny air of the docks. Hastings mopped his brow. She's cool as ice, Poirot, but that perfume, it's too much of a coincidence. And cyanide's her domain. Oui, Hastings, Poirot replied, his cane tapping thoughtfully. The perfume, it is a thread that ties the crime scene to the widow, and now the chemist. But is it evidence, or a red herring cast to mislead us? And this fatal secret, a formula, a war crime, or something more personal? They walked toward the administrative building, passing a group of workers unloading barrels. Poirot's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of a man in a navy uniform, lingering near a warehouse, his cap pulled low. The man turned away quickly, but not before Poirot noted his gait, hesitant, as if avoiding notice. Hastings, he whispered, another watcher. This yard, it is rehearsed. And the mention of a war secret stirred his curiosity. What had the Admiral done in 1918 that haunted him still? Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming with purpose. We must next speak with Lieutenant Reed. His demotion, it is another thread in this web. But first, I wish to revisit the Admiral's office. There is something we have missed, a detail that whispers to the little gray cells. As they turned back toward the administrative building, a sudden shout echoed from the docks. A crate had slipped, nearly crushing a worker. The chaos drew eyes, but Poirot's remained fixed on the shadows, where he sensed the killer's presence, as elusive as the river's currents. The fatal secret, whatever it was buried deep, and Poirot knew that unearthing it would require every ounce of his methodical genius. Chapter 5. The Lieutenant's Demotion. The Brooklyn Navy Yard was a hive of activity, as the afternoon sun of October 1935 cast long shadows across the docks, its rays glinting off the half-built hulls of warships that loomed like iron giants. The air was thick with the clang of hammers, the hiss of welding torches, and the briny scent of the East River, which churned restlessly against the piers. Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings threaded their way through the bustling yard, their destination the barracks where Lieutenant Samuel Reed, the young officer demoted by Admiral Harrington, awaited. The mystery of the Admiral's poisoning deepened with each step, and Poirot's sharp mind was already sifting through the tangle of clues. The missing locket, the floral perfume, the threatening note, and the cigar butt, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to align. Mon ami, Poirot said, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the cobblestone path. This Lieutenant Reed, he is a man scorned, no? Demoted by the Admiral, his pride wounded. Such a grievance can fester into something darker, perhaps dark enough for murder. Hastings, shielding his eyes against the sun, frowned. He's just a lad, Poirot. Bitter, maybe, but poisoning? That's a cold sort of crime for a hot-headed officer. Still, he was on the docks that night, could have seen something. Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Oui, Hastings, or done something. The docks, they are the veins of this yard, carrying secrets as surely as they carry cargo. Let us see what the lieutenant reveals. The barracks were a stark, utilitarian building of red brick, its narrow windows offering little light to the rows of bunks within. Inside, the air smelled of polished boots and tobacco, a faint undercurrent of sweat lingering from the men who called this place home. Lieutenant Samuel Reed stood, waiting in a small office, his Navy uniform crisp but his posture rigid, as if braced for inspection or interrogation. In his mid-20s, he had the earnest features of youth, with close-cropped blonde hair and blue eyes that flickered with unease.
Lies to get me out of the way. I was humiliated, sent back to grunt work. Hastings, notebook in hand, leaned forward. Lies, you say? Who'd want to sabotage you? Reed hesitated, his eyes darting to the window. I don't know. Maybe Victor Lang. He never liked me. Thought I was too green to be near the Admiral's projects. Or maybe it was personal. Harrington had a way of making enemies. Poirot's eyebrows arched slightly. Personal, you say? Did the Admiral confide in you, perhaps? Speak of a fatal secret? Reed's face paled, but he nodded slowly. Once. About a week ago. We were reviewing patrol schedules, and he got this look, haunted-like. Said he carried a secret from the Great War, something that could ruin lives. He mentioned a locket, showed it to me, gold with a photo inside. Said it was proof of betrayal, but he wouldn't explain. Hastings scribbled furiously. Betrayal? Whose? He didn't say. Reed replied, his voice low, but he was on edge, kept looking over his shoulder. I figured it was about those submarine designs. Everyone knew they were worth a fortune. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And this locket, monsieur? Where is it now? Reed shook his head. Gone. I noticed it missing the day before he died. Thought he'd misplaced it. But now, maybe someone took it. Poirot's mind whirred. The missing locket a thread that wove through every suspect's story. He rose, pacing the small office, his cane tapping softly. His eyes fell on a corkboard pinned with duty rosters, a map of the yard, and a photograph of Reed receiving a commendation, Harrington at his side, the locket glinting faintly. Most interesting, Poirot murmured. And your whereabouts, Lieutenant, on the night of the murder? Patrolling the docks, Reed said quickly. Standard rounds, 8 to midnight. Saw nothing unusual, just workers, cranes, the usual. The night guard can vouch for me. Hastings glanced at Poirot. The docks are close to the Admiral's office. You didn't hear anything? A cry? A glass breaking? Reed's eyes flickered.
Clues. They are like the stars, small, but they guide us through the dark. He pocketed the button, his mind noting its proximity to the Admiral's office. Careless accident or evidence planted to incriminate? As they prepared to leave, Poirot turned back to Reed. One final question, monsieur. Did you ever smell perfume in the Admiral's office? A floral scent, perhaps? Reed frowned, confused. Perfume? No, never. That office reeked of brandy and cigars, nothing else. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. The perfume, present in the office, Eleanor's parlor, and Voss's lab, was absent in Reed's account. A curious omission. Merci, Lieutenant. We shall speak again. Outside, the yard was alive with the clatter of industry, but the air felt heavy with unspoken truths. Hastings mopped his brow, glancing at the button in Poirot's gloved hand. That button, Poirot, it's damning. Reed was near the office, and he's got a grudge. Could he have slipped in, poisoned the glass? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Possible, Hastings, but not certain. The button, like the cigar butt, feels too convenient. And his alibi, patrolling the docks, it places him close, yet not inside. We must verify with the night guard. They walked toward the piers, where the river lapped against the pilings, its murky depths hiding secrets as surely as the yard itself. Poirot's mind churned, weaving the clues. Reed's demotion,
The locket's mysterious photo, the war secret, the button. Was Reed a wronged officer seeking revenge, or another pawn in a larger game? The perfume's absence in his account suggested he had not been in the office, or that he lied skillfully. "Hastings," Poirot said, pausing near a stack of crates. "The locket. It is the heart of this mystery, I think. A photo of betrayal, Reed called it. But whose betrayal? And why take it, unless it points to the killer?" Hastings nodded, then froze as a muffled splash echoed from the river. A heavy object hitting the water, ripples spreading in the sunlight. "What was that?" he whispered, peering over the edge. Poirot's eyes narrowed, scanning the suspect, and Poirot knew that unraveling it would require piercing the veil of lies that cloaked the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Chapter 6. Gathering Threads. The Brooklyn Navy Yard faded into the dusk as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings returned to their hotel, a modest but elegant establishment overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The October evening of 1935 carried a chill that seeped through the windows, and the distant hum of the city, streetcars, hawkers, and the occasional siren formed a restless backdrop. Inside their suite, the glow of a single lamp cast long shadows across the oak-paneled walls, where a map of the Navy Yard lay pinned beside a notepad scrawled with clues. Poirot paced the Persian rug, his cane silent, his mind a whirl of connections as he sifted through the tangled threads of the Admiral's murder. "Mon ami," Poirot said, pausing to adjust his impeccable mustache. "This case, it is like a tapestry, each thread a clue, but woven to deceive. The missing locket, the perfume, the cigar butt, the threatening note, the button, they dance before us, but the pattern, it eludes." Hastings, sprawled in an armchair with a cup of tea, frowned at his notes. "It's a devil of a mess, Poirot. Eleanor's cold marriage, Lang's grudge, Voss's cyanide expertise, Reed's demotion, everyone's got a motive. And that fatal secret keeps popping up. Could it be espionage? With Europe arming, those submarine designs are worth killing for." Poirot's gray eyes gleamed, reflecting the lamplight. "Oui, Hastings, espionage is a possibility. The Great War left scars, and now, with whispers of new conflicts, secrets of the sea are gold. But the method, cyanide on the glass, not in the bottle, suggests intimacy, a personal touch. The killer knew the Admiral's habits." He tapped his temple. "The little gray cells, they are arranging the pieces, but we need more." Hastings set down his cup, his brow furrowed. "What about the safe? Rifled, papers scattered. Whoever opened..."
Fingerprints on the safe. Eleanor Harrington's. She lied about not visiting the office that night. Poirot's eyebrows arched, his expression unreadable. "Most intriguing, Inspector. Madame Harrington claimed she was at the gala until midnight. Yet her prints, they tell another story. We must confront her." Hastings scribbled in his notebook. "She's been slippery, Poirot. That perfume in the office, hers, Voss's, or someone else's. And now fingerprints. She's deeper in this than she let on." "Oui," Poirot murmured, circling the desk. He knelt, examining the chalk outline where the Admiral had fallen. The shattered glass now cleared, but its memory vivid. The faint scent of perfume lingered, fainter now, but unmistakable. Gardenia, tying Eleanor, Voss, and the crime scene together. He rose, his eyes falling on a small drawer in the desk, its lock scratched as if tampered with. "Hastings, observe this drawer. It was forced, perhaps after the murder." Malone joined him, peering at the scratches. "Missed that. Could be where the locket was hidden. Or something else."
Poirot said softly. He opened the drawer, revealing a single sheet of paper, a coded message, scrawled in the Admiral's precise hand. 407128. Negative 73.9681. Beneath the anchor. Coordinates, Inspector. And a clue. Beneath the anchor. A second safe, perhaps. Malone's eyes widened. There's a monument in the yard, an anchor from a great warship. Could be a hiding spot. Poirot nodded, pocketing the paper. We shall investigate, but first, Madame Harrington. They left the office, the yard's clamour fading as they hailed a taxi to Brooklyn Heights. Eleanor Harrington received them in her parlour. A black silk dress, a stark contrast to the morning light filtering through the velvet drapes. Her composure was strained, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting an escape. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice tight, "I've told you all I know. Why are you here again?" Poirot settled into an armchair, his gaze piercing. "Madame, you were..."
Room. His eyes fell on the roses from their last visit, now wilting, their scent fading, but still echoing the crime scene. The plot, it thickens, Hastings. Madame, we thank you. We shall verify your story. As they left, the rain began again, a light drizzle that turned the cobblestone slick. Hastings pulled his coat tighter. She's lying, Poirot, or at least not telling the whole truth. Fingerprints, perfume, an argument. She's up to her neck in this. Perhaps, Poirot said, his cane tapping rhythmically. But her fear, it is genuine. She hides something, but is it murder? Or is she, too, a victim of this fatal secret? His thoughts turned to the coded message, the coordinates pointing to the yard's anchor monument. We must find this hiding place, Hastings. It may hold the key to the Admiral's death. Back at the yard they located the monument, a massive iron anchor, its flukes embedded in a concrete base, a tribute to sailors lost in the Great War. Poirot examined the base, his gloved fingers probing for hidden compartments. A loose stone shifted, revealing a small metal box, locked but rusted. Malone, summoned to assist, called for a crowbar, and they pried it open. Inside were documents, letters, faded but legible, hinting at the Admiral's dealings during the war. Shipments diverted, funds misappropriated, names of shadowy contacts. War profiteering, Hastings gasped. This must be the fatal secret. Harrington was no hero, but a traitor. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But who knew? And who killed to silence him? He tucked the letters into his coat, his mind racing. The documents named no one directly, but their implications were explosive, motive enough for murder or blackmail. As night fell, the yard grew quiet, the workers dispersing, leaving only the Marines and the river's restless murmur. Poirot and Hastings stood by the anchor, the weight of their discovery heavy in the air. A sudden sound broke the silence. Footsteps, quick and furtive, echoing in a nearby alley between warehouses. Poirot's hand tightened on his cane, his eyes scanning the shadows. Hastings, he waiting for the final act of a tragedy yet to unfold. Chapter 7. The Hidden Locket. The Brooklyn Navy Yard lay under a veil of twilight as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings returned to the administrative building, their steps echoing in the quiet of the October evening in 1935. The clamor of daytime industry had faded, leaving only the distant lap of the East River and the occasional clank of a crane settling for the night. The air was heavy with the scent of oil and salt, but to Poirot it was the weight of secrets, unraveled and yet to be uncovered, that hung thickest. The discovery of the coded message and the war profiteering letters had tightened the web of the Admiral's murder, and now a new clue beckoned. The missing locket, a golden thread in the tapestry of deception.
Mon ami, Poirot said, his cane tapping softly as they approached the Admiral's office. The locket. It is the heart of this mystery, no? A symbol of betrayal, Reed called it. We must find it, for it may point to the killer's hand. Hastings, clutching his notebook, glanced at the shadowed docks. It's got to be somewhere, Poirot. Stolen from the body, hidden in the yard, or maybe destroyed to cover the truth. But where do we start? Poirot's gray eyes gleamed in the dim light. We start where the Admiral fell, Hastings. The office. It holds more than we have seen. The little gray cells, they whisper of a hiding place overlooked. They entered the office, now a silent shrine to the crime. The chalk outline of Admiral Harrington's body, a stark reminder of the violence that had unfolded. Inspector Malone had left a single lamp burning, casting long shadows across the scattered blueprints and the rifled safe. Poirot's gaze swept the room, his mind replaying their earlier visits, the shattered brandy glass, the cigarette burn, the faint scent of gardenia perfume, the scratched drawer. He moved to the desk, his gloved fingers probing its edges with surgical precision. Hastings, he said, pausing at a bookshelf lined with naval manuals. The Admiral was a man of order. Yet this room speaks of chaos.
Heart, not just the crime, but the man. This woman, this child, who are they? A sister, a lover, a daughter? He tucked the locket into his pocket, his expression grave. We must question the suspects again, but with care. The truth, it is close, yet slippery. They left the office and hailed a taxi to the laboratory, where Dr. Miriam Voss was working late, her silhouette visible through the frosted glass. The chemical fumes stung their noses as they entered, the hum of equipment a low undercurrent to her brisk greeting. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, setting down a beaker. Back so soon? I've told you everything. Poirot produced the locket, holding it up to catch the light. Not everything, mademoiselle. This locket, found hidden in the Admiral's desk. You said he spoke of a secret. Is this the key? Voss's eyes widened, her composure faltering. I didn't know it was hidden there. John showed it to me once, said it was personal, a reminder of his past. I assumed it was his mother or sister. Her voice trembled. But there's something I didn't tell you. The child in that photo, it's mine, ours. John and I, we had a daughter years ago. He hid her existence to protect his career, his marriage. Hastings gasped. A secret child? That's motive, Dr. Voss. Did he threaten to expose her? Voss's hand shook, but she met his gaze. No, I loved him, even after he ended things. I'd never harm him, but Eleanor knew. She confronted me weeks ago, furious. If anyone had reason to kill him, Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, mademoiselle, your perfume was in his office. Your expertise is cyanide. A coincidence, perhaps? He watched her closely, noting the flush in her cheeks, the way her fingers gripped the workbench. I was there earlier that day, discussing formulas, she insisted. I swear, I left him alive. They thanked her and moved to the barracks, where Lieutenant Samuel Reed was polishing his boots, his face a mask of controlled anger. Poirot showed him the locket. Monsieur Reed, you spoke of betrayal. This photo, do you know it? Everywhere. Doesn't mean I killed him.
As they left, Poirot arranged for a gathering of all suspects the next day in the Admiral's office. Tomorrow, Hastings, we begin the denouement. The locket, it points to a personal motive, but the letters from the anchor, they speak of treason. The truth lies at their intersection. They returned to their hotel, the city's lights twinkling like stars against the night. Poirot paced, the locket in his hand, its weight a reminder of the human cost of secrets. Hastings, he said, pausing by the window. The Admiral's past, war profiteering, a hidden child. It is a mosaic of guilt. But who killed to bury it? Voss with her child's secret? Eleanor betrayed by love? Lang driven by greed? Or Reed humiliated? Hastings sipped his tea, frowning. The locket's inscription, E, could be Eleanor, or someone we haven't met, and those letters, proof of treason. Someone wanted them silenced. We, Poirot said, his voice low. But the method, cyanide on the glass, it is intimate, planned. The killer knew the Admiral's habits, his trust. He paused, his eyes distant. We are close, Hastings, but the final piece eludes us. As they prepared to retire, a sudden sound shattered the quiet. A gunshot, sharp and echoing from the street below. Hastings rushed to the window, but the street was empty, the rain-slicked pavement reflecting only streetlights. A warning, Poirot? Or an accident? Poirot's expression was grim. Neither, perhaps. The killer grows nervous, mon ami. The locket, the letters, they are keys, and someone fears we are too close to the lock. The rain fell harder, drumming on the windows like a heartbeat. Poirot clutched the locket, its inscription burning in his mind. My fatal secret. Forgive me. E. The Brooklyn Navy Yard, with its iron ships and shadowed alleys, held its breath, as if sensing the storm of truth about to break us from the truth. The locket, the letters, the perfume, they are threads, but the spider, it still hides. Hastings, clutching his notebook, shivered in the evening chill. A distraction, or a warning, Poirot? Someone's getting nervous. We've got Eleanor's fingerprints, Voss's secret child, Lang's grudge, Reed's button, too many clues pointing everywhere. Poirot's gray eyes gleamed. We, Hastings, too many. That is the genius of this crime. Clues scattered like breadcrumbs to lead us astray. But the little gray cells, they begin to see the pattern. He paused, his gaze sweeping the darkened docks. Tonight, we unravel the red herrings. Inside the office, Inspector Malone awaited, his ruddy face etched with fatigue. Mr. Poirot, that gunshot was a false alarm. A worker dropped a crate of tools, set off a spark. Scared the hell out of everyone, but no harm done. Now, what's this about new evidence? Poirot produced the locket, its gold chain glinting under the lamp. This, Inspector, was hidden in the Admiral's desk. And these letters, he added, drawing the war profiteering documents from his coat, found beneath the anchor monument. They prove Harrington's treason, diverting funds during the Great War. A motive for murder, no? Malone's eyes widened. Treason? That's explosive. Anyone who knew could have blackmailed him, or killed him to keep it quiet. Hastings nodded. Eleanor, Lang, Voss, Reed, they all had reasons to hate him. But who had the means to slip cyanide onto that glass? Poirot paced, his cane silent on the rug. The means, Hastings, are less troubling than the intent. The cyanide, it was not in the brandy bottle, but on the glass rim, applied with precision. Let us confront the suspects one by one and watch their lies unravel. They began with Victor Lang, summoned to his office across the hall. The air was thick with cigar smoke, and Lang's sharp features were taut with irritation. What now, Poirot? I told you I didn't.
Miriam Voss in her laboratory. where the chemical fumes stung their eyes. She stood rigid, her glasses reflecting the flicker of a burner. Poirot showed her the locket. "Mademoiselle, you claimed this child was yours, yet your alibi, working late here, crumbles. The logbook entry, it is forged, no?" Voss's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. Yes, I altered the log. I was in the Admiral's office that evening, not here. I pleaded with him to acknowledge our daughter, to stop hiding her. He refused, said it would ruin us both. But I swear, I didn't kill him." Hastings leaned forward. "You had access to cyanide, Dr. Voss, and your perfume was in his office. That's damning." "I wore gardenia that day," she admitted, her eyes glistening. "But I left him alive. Someone else must have used my perfume to point at me." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Someone, mademoiselle? Or you, covering your tracks?" She shook her head, tears spilling. "I loved him, even after everything." They moved to the barracks, where Lieutenant Samuel Reed stood polishing his boots, his face a mask of defiance. Poirot held up the torn button. "Monsieur Reed, this was found near the office. Yours, no? You planted it, perhaps, to frame Monsieur Lang." Reed's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly. "All right, I admit it. I dropped the button there. I wanted Lang to take the fall. He's been gunning for me since my demotion, spreading lies to Harrington. But I didn't poison anyone." Hastings scribbled, his brow furrowed. "You were on the docks, close enough to slip in. And you knew about the locket's photo. Betrayal, you said." "I overheard Harrington muttering about it," Reed said, his voice low. "Thought it was his shame, not mine. I'm no killer." Poirot nodded, his mind weaving the threads. Lang's cigar, Voss's forged log, Reed's button, all red herrings, planted to mislead. But the letters from the anchor monument shifted the motive to something larger. He turned to Malone. "Inspector, these documents, they prove Harrington sold secrets to Germany in 1918. A fatal secret." "Sack! I swear I saw someone run in." Poirot peered into the dark water, its ripples catching the moonlight. "Evidence discarded, perhaps," he said softly. "Or another distraction." Hastings shivered. "This case, Poirot, it's like chasing shadows. Everyone's lying, planting clues to point at someone else." "We, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low. "But the red herrings, they crumble under scrutiny. The locket's inscription, 'Forgive me, E,' it points to Eleanor, or another. The letters, they point to treason. The perfume, the cigar, the button, they are noise. But the cyanide, it is the signal." They returned to their hotel, the city's lights flickering like a code yet to be cracked. Poirot paced the suite, the locket in his hand, its weight a reminder of the human cost of secrets. "Hastings," he said, pausing by the window, "tomorrow we confront them all. The killer, they are clever, but they cannot outrun the little grey cells." The rain began again, a soft patter against the glass, mirroring the rhythm of Poirot's thoughts. The fatal secret, treason, a hidden child, a betrayed trust was unraveling. But the killer's face remained in shadow. The Brooklyn Navy Yard, with its iron giants and whispered lies, waited for the final act, and Poirot knew the stage was set for a reckoning. Chapter 9. The Final Confrontation. The Brooklyn Navy Yard lay under a pall of tension as the morning sun of October 1935 filtered through a haze of industrial smoke, casting long shadows across the docks and half-built warships. The air was heavy with the tang of oil and the distant churn of the East River. But to Hercule Poirot, It was the weight of an impending revelation that charged the atmosphere. The Admiral's office, now a stage for truth, awaited the gathering of suspects. Eleanor Harrington, Victor Lang, Dr. Miriam Voss, Lieutenant Samuel Reed, and Inspector Malone. The locket, the war suspects were assembled, their faces a gallery of unease. Eleanor sat rigidly, her black silk dress a stark contrast to her pale complexion, her hands twisting a handkerchief. Victor Lang paced, his sharp features taut, a cigar unlit in his hand. Dr. Miriam Voss stood by the window, her glasses glinting as she avoided eye contact. Lieutenant Samuel Reed, in his crisp uniform, shifted uncomfortably, his youthful face etched with defiance. Inspector Malone leaned against the desk, arms crossed, his ruddy face expectant. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding, "we are here to unmask the murderer of Admiral John Harrington. A man poisoned in this very room, his brandy glass coated with cyanide, a method most precise, requiring knowledge of his habits." He paced, his cane silent, his eyes scanning each face. "Let us review the clues." He held up the locket, its gold chain catching the light. "This, found hidden in a desk compartment, bears a photograph and the inscription, 'My fatal secret. Forgive me, E.' A secret child, perhaps. Dr. Voss, you claimed this child was yours, a motive for murder, if the Admiral threatened exposure." Voss's voice trembled. "I told you I loved him. I begged him to acknowledge our daughter, but I didn't kill him." Poirot turned to Eleanor. "Madam Harrington, your fingerprints were on the safe, your perfume, gardenia, in this room. You admitted to an argument here that night about divorce, a woman scorned, perhaps?" Eleanor's eyes flashed. "I argued, yes, but I left him alive. I'd never stoop to murder." Poirot's gaze shifted to Lang. "Monsieur Lang, your cigar butt was found outside this door. Your threatening note, 'Reveal the secret or die,' in your desk. Your feud over patents, it burned hot, no?" Lang's face reddened. "I told you, that note's a fake. Someone's framing me. I wanted my designs, not his life." Finally, Poirot faced Reed. "Lieutenant Reed, your button was near this office, planted after he broke my heart." The room tensed, but Poirot raised a hand, his expression shifting. "No, mademoiselle, you are innocent. A red herring, cleverly placed." He spun to Lang, his voice sharp. "Monsieur Victor Lang, it is you who are the killer." Lang froze, his cigar dropping to the floor. "Me? You're mad. I wasn't even here." Poirot's smile was cold. "Oh, but you were, monsieur. The note, it was yours, forged poorly to seem a frame. The cigar butt, dropped not by carelessness, but to mislead. You knew the Admiral's habits, his nightly brandy, his locked door. You visited earlier, coated the glass rim with cyanide from Voss's lab, where you had access as her colleague. Your motive? The Admiral's plan to cut you out of the patents, and his discovery of your own indiscretions, gambling debts, perhaps dealings with foreign agents." Lang's face paled, his hands trembling. "You've got no proof." Poirot produced a small vial from his pocket, its label marked potassium cyanide. "This, found hidden in your office, bears your fingerprints. You stole it from the lab, used it to poison the glass, then rifled the safe after his death to retrieve the war profiteering letters, proof of his treason, which you planned to use for blackmail." Lang bolted for the door, but Malone's Marines blocked his path, their rifles raised. He slumped, his voice breaking. "All right, I did it. Harrington was a traitor, selling secrets to Germany back in 18. He was going to double-cross me, take my designs, expose my debts. I had to stop him." The room fell silent, the weight of the confession settling like dust. Eleanor's hands covered her face. Voss wept softly, and Reed stared, stunned. Hastings scribbled furiously, his eyes wide. "Good Lord, Poirot, you've done it again." But Poirot's expression remained grave. "Wait, mes amis, there is more." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, as if sensing another layer to the mystery. "The locket's inscription, 'Forgive me, E.' It points to another hand. Perhaps may yet reveal another player." A scream echoed from the docks, sharp and fleeting, cutting through the evening's calm. Hastings rushed to the window, but the yard was empty, the shadows swallowing any trace. "Another distraction, Poirot?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice low. "Or a sign that the web extends beyond this room. The fatal secret, it is not yet fully unveiled." The suspects dispersed, their faces etched with shock and fear. Poirot clutched the locket, its inscription a lingering enigma. The Brooklyn Navy Yard, with its iron giants and whispered lies, held one final act, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to uncover it. Chapter 10. The Ultimate Revelation. The Brooklyn Navy Yard lay bathed in the pale light of dawn, October 1935, its cranes and warships standing sentinel over the East River's restless currents. The air was crisp, carrying the sharp tang of salt and steel, but an undercurrent of unease pulsed through the yard, as if it sensed the final act of a tragedy unfolding. Hercule Poirot stood in the Admiral's office, the scene of the crime, where the suspects, Eleanor Harrington, Dr. Miriam Voss, Lieutenant Samuel Reed, and Inspector Malone, had gathered once more. Victor Lang, unmasked as the poisoner, was in custody, but Poirot's gray eyes gleamed with the certainty that the web of deceit extended further. The locket, the war profiteering letters, and the lingering question of the fatal secret demanded one last revelation. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice a calm beacon in the tense room. "We have uncovered much. Monsieur Lang's cyanide, his motive rooted in greed and betrayal. Yet the locket's inscription, 'Forgive me, A,' and the letters from the Anchor Monument suggest a deeper truth. The Admiral's death was not the act of one hand alone." He paced, his cane silent, his gaze sweeping over the suspects' strained faces. "Let us unravel the final thread." Eleanor sat rigidly, her black silk dress a shroud of mourning, her hands clenched around a handkerchief. Voss, her glasses glinting, stood by the window, her composure frayed. Reed, in his crisp uniform, shifted uneasily, his youthful defiance. "No? Is treason during the Great War, perhaps more?" Eleanor's eyes flashed, but her voice was steady. "I suspected things." He muttered in his sleep about deals, money from the war. "I thought it was guilt, not murder." Poirot's gaze shifted to Reed. "Lieutenant, you spoke of a photo of betrayal. You planted a button to frame Lang, but you claimed loyalty to the Admiral, despite your demotion." Reed's jaw tightened. "I hated what he did to me, but I didn't kill him. That locket, it was his shame, not mine." Malone cleared his throat. "Mr. Poirot, Lang confessed. He poisoned the glass, stole the letters. What more is there?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Much, Inspector. The cyanide on the glass rim was Lang's work, oui. But the motive, it was shared." He paused, his eyes locking on to Eleanor. "Madame, you stand." Eleanor rose, her face paling, her hands trembling. "What are you saying?" Poirot's voice was soft but relentless. "You helped Lang, madame. You knew of the Admiral's plan, not just his war profiteering, but his intent to sell new submarine designs to the Nazis, a betrayal in these tense times. You and Lang conspired to stop him, to prevent treason that would stain your name and his fortune." The room gasped. Voss clutched the window frame. Reed stared, stunned, and Malone's eyes widened. Hastings scribbled furiously, his pen scratching like a heartbeat. Eleanor's voice broke. "That's absurd. I loved John, despite everything." "No, madame," Poirot said, his tone cutting through her denial. "You loved the life he gave you, status, wealth, but his treason threatened it all. You visited his office that evening, argued about divorce, yes, but also about his dealings. You knew Lang's plan to poison the glass, and you ensured the Admiral was alone, distracted, trusting." Eleanor's hands covered her face, a sob escaping. I couldn't let him sell those plans. He was going to was his nephew, hidden to protect the family name. "But I didn't kill him." "No," Poirot said gently. "You are innocent, though your anger led you to plant the button. The true crime lies with Lang and Eleanor." Malone stepped forward, his voice gruff. "That's enough, Mr. Poirot. You've got them dead to rights. Marines, take them." Eleanor collapsed into her chair, weeping, as Lang struggled against the Marines, his curses echoing. "He deserved it! A traitor to his country!" Poirot's voice was solemn. "But murder, monsieur, is still murder. The law does not forgive, even for noble causes." Lawn warms as the Marines escorted Lang and Eleanor away. The room fell silent, the weight of the truth settling like dust. Voss wiped her tears, her relief palpable, while Reed stood rigid, grappling with his revealed heritage. Hastings closed his notebook, his eyes wide. "Good Lord, Poirot, you've outdone yourself. A conspiracy. Lang and Eleanor, all to stop a traitor." Poirot gazed out the window, where the dawn painted the river in hues of gold. "Oui, Hastings. But the human heart, it is the deepest mystery. The Admiral's treason, his hidden family, his regrets. They wove a tragedy that demanded blood." Malone clapped Poirot on the shoulder. "Brilliant work, Mr. Poirot. The Navy Yard's in your debt." Poirot bowed slightly, but his expression remained grave. "The debt, Inspector, is to justice. The fatal secret is laid bare, but its cost, it lingers." As they left the office, the yard stirred to life. Workers returning to their tasks, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded. The river flowed on, its currents carrying away the echoes of betrayal. Poirot clutched the locket, its inscription a final whisper of the Admiral's guilt. "Forgive me, E." The Brooklyn Navy Yard, with its iron giants and shadowed secrets, resumed its rhythm. But for Poirot, the case was a reminder that truth, like the river, always found its way to light. Hastings, walking beside him, smiled. "Another case closed, Poirot. You never fail to amaze." Poirot's eyes